We're in the home stretch here. Been going through this morning and getting all the valves adjusted on it. I already did position 1. We barred the engine over 360. I'm on position 2 now. So if you can look, there's little tiny blue marks here from my layout pencil. So the ones that don't have it are loose now. So now we're going to go through and get the other 6. On a Cummins, you only need 2 positions. First position you get half the valve, second position you get the other half. There's a pin in the timing cover, which you can set. Let's see if I can get you guys down here where you can see it. Right back there. You can see the little pin. Push it in. It'll lock the engine at TDC while you have somebody barring it over. There's a Cummins barring tool right here, so this slides in and you can use this to rotate the engine over. It grabs the flywheel right down there, that silver hole you can see. Flashlight's right in the way. But yeah, put it in there, rotate it over. Then what I went ahead and did to get to position 2, it's made a mark on the balancer because you have to rotate it 360 degrees. So there's a blue mark down on the balancer off a common point. Rotate it over, now we're there. On 12 valve, you set your intake valves to 0.010 of an inch, exhaust 0.020. Really simple to do. The only thing we've done, another trick I've done, is I made a wrench to do these. I do so many Cummins that we threw one together. So it's just a cheap, no-name wrench. Craftsman 14mm socket out of our spare socket drawer. We always have buckets of old cheap tools like these. I mean, it's 12 point, but it works perfect. It's just the size we need to be able to do this. Gives you clearance so you get over the top of the rocker. You clear everything, keeps your knuckles out of the way. Great to do the initial adjustments and to set them down. Now, those do get torqued when they're done, but this is good for just running the adjustment. I snug them down, and then I go through at the end and I torque them all. So I'm gonna get the last 6 valves adjusted up on here real quick. Then we're gonna throw the valve covers on, and next up will be our fluid damper. Now, these valves are really far off from where you would normally see them since we had the entire top end apart. The head's been machined, new push rods. So we backed them way off. There we go. They're all torqued 18 foot-pounds. Now we can go ahead and get the rocker boxes on it. Now that we got the top end of it sealed up, start the oil change. And I know seeing this frame go straight in the trash is going to make a lot of people happy. Do this carefully where I don't make a giant mess. There we go. All right, well, I got busy with some off-camera busy work. EGT probe is in. Return lines are on. Went ahead and I got the crank sensor pulled out of it because it gets relocated with the new damper. Now, they actually give you plugs because you're supposed to cut and extend the harness. I'm not going to throw the weather pack in it though. I'm going to just cut the end off and stretch the harness itself, because what they're wanting you to do is cut this, put another connector in line, and I don't see the point of adding a connector. There's just going to be another point for an issue later. But we're going to take it off. I was hoping I could get it off with this. This is actually made to be used with an impact, to put it in there and hit it, but it's too much torque loss to get those busted loose. Would have made it real easy though, because I would have been able to just pop the bolts out, pull it off, put the other one on. So I'm going to have to do it the boring way. So we're going to put this back in the engine as a barring tool, but I'm going to use this to lock the crankshaft. So I'm going to put a ratchet back on this, spin it till it hits the frame rail, and then the engine is basically held in place. Then I'll just crawl down there with the ratchet and take the 4 15mm bolts out of the balancer. We'll get it off. Once that's off, I'll show you a comparison of them side by side so you can get an idea of what we're dealing with and why we're having to relocate the crank trigger for it, but it ain't too bad. So there are the two side by side. Here's the original. That is the new one. Try to do this one handy here. This new one is a lot heavier. If you look, you can see all the way around. It's bigger too, so that is why we are relocating the sensor. This new one, if you also notice, there's provisions here where you can drill and pin it to the crank. Factory one is just retained with the 4 bolts. This has the ability to be pinned. We aren't going to pin this one right now. It might happen in the future. Generally with high RPM, we always recommend getting it done, but for right now, we're just going to install it as is. There it is. Went ahead and got it installed. It is not torqued yet, but it's ran all the way down and snugged. Now you can see right there, those 2 studs are what used to mount the crank trigger. And right here, we've got a new bracket and extensions to relocate it over to this side. So next up, we'll start getting some stuff apart. We'll get that crankshaft trigger remounted so then we can see what we need to do to the wiring harness to get it extended down to it. Shouldn't be too terrible. I mean, it's only a 3-wire connector, so like I said, instead of adding another weather pack connector and pushing this down, we're just going to cut it, extend it, and loom it back in right here so it looks factory, because I mean really right now if you open the hood of this truck it looks really stock. Most people aren't going to know that there's anything done to this. Getting the bracket down here mounted. Now I've got it loose so we can move it, because we're going to have to shim the sensor to be 50 thousandths off the balancer. Now it says to do it with a brass shim. I don't have a set of brass feeler gauges. Presumably the reason we're wanting to do that is because the sensor is magnetic. So I'm going to go see what I can find. I'm going to put us at about 50 thousandths. That's going to be a non-ferrous material. As you can see right now, it's already stuck on the balancer. But we're going to get it bolted up in there, get everything kind of loosely set here. Then I'm going to get it all shimmed up, get my vertical, my in and out, and all that to where I like it, where this has got a nice reading off of here. And then take the wire, run it up the side of the gear train. It's got a tab here to retain it. Then we can get an idea how far we're going to have to extend the harness to make it fit. Alright, everything's tightened up. Got 50 thousandths clearance between the sensor and here. And we threw a new belt on. Now, you have to have the belt on before you can put this on. Belt obviously goes around here, and you're not going to fit a pelt through 50 thousandths. Now that that's done, we're going to, the wire passed up there, I'm going to throw it over a fan blade for right now, so I can reach it from the top side, because we are going to be installing it up there on the timing cover. Now, I can see we got a leak right there coming from the timing cover. We'll have to address that. That's not a big deal. So we have them underneath it now and go from the top side. Okay, so now we've got the wire routed up the timing cover with 2 separate points where it's tied off. We're not going to have any issues with it interfering with the fan. We have a nice clean install. So now this pigtail right here needs to get extended down there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to unloom this real quick, take off just this electrical tape that they've done it with, and we're going to split it off probably somewhere right in here so we have good length on each side. And I'm going to go make a jumper harness. So we're going to solder and heat shrink this end. I'll probably go do that on the bench. We'll come back, connect it here. Once we get it trimmed to be the correct length, I want just a little bit of wire to stick up here so I can loom it up and tie it off to here so it's nice and secure, and put it down to that connector right there. When I'm done, I don't want this to look like anything's been done to the factory harness. I want this to look like a stock truck under the hood still. Alright, well, we actually had some of the self-sealing butt connectors, the heat shrink ones, so I'm going to go that route for right now. But I went upstairs, grabbed a junk wiring harness we had. So I've got some good, proper wire gauge here, and I've got a bunch of different colors to choose from. So I gotta find an orange, a white with a black trace, and a black with a blue trace, or at least close to these colors. Just so that if anyone's trying to diagnose this later, they're not gonna have an issue. So there's my orange. Let's see, do we got a black with a blue in here anywhere? Right there. So I'm just gonna keep working through the harness just like that. Make sure that I'm pulling all the wires I need to match that. And then this just makes it nicer and easier for the next guy. Got it all loomed in. Got it zip tied off to the existing harness. Comes right down here to its plug. I'm pretty happy with that. All we've got left now is go ahead and do the final torque on the front balancer and fill the oil up on it. Just down to finishing up torquing the bolts. Balancer's torqued. All we have left is to put oil in it. This was always one of the most exciting times. We're really close to starting this thing. Hopefully we'll get in here tomorrow morning, run over our last list of pre-startup checks, hook the batteries up, fire this thing, take it on its test drive. Depending on how the test drive goes, we might make some pump timing changes to the truck. We'll see how it feels after the test drive. Right now I just gotta pour a little bit more oil in this thing, finish topping off the coolant before I go home tonight. We'll have this thing ready to run. Well, that's gonna do it on our last day of build. Tomorrow, this thing should be firing up, going out on its maiden test drive. I'm pretty excited. I know the owner stopped by yesterday and we talked with him for a little bit. He's really excited to get this truck and get to have some fun with it. It's a 300,000 mile truck. Been in his family since new, and up until about a week ago when we started on it, this thing was completely bone stock. So, should be excited. Thank you guys for your support following along with this. I've had a lot of great comments and a lot of people are really enjoying this series. Hopefully, we will do another one in the not so distant future.